What is it that makes one snooker cue better than any other snooker cue? Well, it's mostly how straight it can strike the cue ball, and you can test this by placing an object ball on the top cushion and the white near the D. If you line up the shot to hit it absolutely straight through the center of the cue ball to the center of the object ball, but before you hit it, you move your tip over to one side to hit as close as you can to the side of the cue ball without miscuing, and play the shot like this as hard as you can. And this means the closer the white gets to striking the center of the red, the better the cue. Because striking the side of the cue ball causes it to deflect offline in the opposite direction. So this test shows us how much any cue like this basic cue causes the cue ball to deflect offline. So if I aim for the center of the red there, striking it in the center, and I'm just going to move my cue over to the right hand side of the cue ball and strike it as hard as I can, you can see we miss the red by a good few inches. Unfortunately, I can't do the same test with my current cue because I snapped the wood under the ferrule playing this shot last week. However, I do have footage from about 5 years ago where I'm doing exactly the same test, and here you can see I get a lot closer to the red. I only miss it by an inch or so, possibly less than that. And that means my cue would have hit the ball pretty straight, obviously, before this happened. Now it's damaged enough that I'm going to need a new cue. So let's give this a test and see how this does. And I'm doing the same thing again, aiming for the center of the red, moving my tip as far away from the center of the cue ball as I can, and playing the shot about as hard as I can. That's really good. I should cut it in. This means my new cue must strike the ball pretty straight. It's a grand handmade cue, but of course there's more to a cue than just this. We now know it hits the ball straight, but can it play some of the game's toughest shots, like the shot that broke my old cue last week? Ding has to topspin the cue ball around the middle pocket here, and it just requires a lot of topspin to get this right, and to judge the arc so you go around the middle pocket and not straight back in it after it leaves the cushion again. Last week I tried to play this shot with a rack cue, but it just wasn't good enough to get the topspin on the cue ball I needed to get the white back down the table. And this week it looks like with my new cue I can get plenty of topspin on the cue ball, occasionally too much. This shot also requires right hand side, which is difficult to line up properly with my new cue and is taking a few attempts to get right, although I've got it and even gone too far down the table. I've just got to get it under control. Last week I simply couldn't get enough spin on the cue ball, and this week I definitely can. I've even gone slightly too far again, but that's as close as I'm going to get. After my cue broke, I had absolutely no chance of playing this Neil Robertson shot. Because my table's so fast, I made it halfway back down the table, but that's about as good as I could do last week with a rack cue. I'm definitely expecting my new cue to be a bit better, and it's a good start already, as I seem to be potting the majority of these shots, whereas last week I was struggling to even pot them when playing them at maximum power and attempting to play them with maximum backspin at the same time. However, I still can't get the cue ball far enough or fast enough down the other end of the table to get it to come back again. The spin keeps slowing it down, although I would say on most of these shots I'm getting at least close, and this looks a lot better. I haven't quite got the angle right, but I've made it most of the way back down the table, so if I can just get it a little bit closer to the cushion, even if I don't hit it, we'll see if we can do any better. And yeah, I'm nearly in the same place as Neil there. That's about as good as I'm going to do. I also want to do a comparison with my old cue. This is one of the last shots I played with my old cue before it broke, and I didn't quite manage to make it as far back down the table as Zhao Guodong did. I made it just past the blue spot, good enough to pot the black, but it didn't go far enough. So let's see if with my new cue I can get a little bit further. My first attempt was good. I nearly made it back past the middle pocket, but I just didn't hit the white low enough. I've hit it a lot lower here, and that's about as well as I could cue it, but as we can see, it's not quite as good as with my old cue. Now this is hardly surprising because my old cue is a ridiculously heavy 21 ounces, which means when I played a screw shot, if I really got through the ball well, I'd have a little bit more mass to generate the spin, whereas my new cue is a sensible 18 ounces. And that means that mass isn't quite there, but there are other benefits to this, such as close range shots where having that extra mass at times can make it really difficult to control. The main reason I opted for this cue though was its length. It's exactly 60 inches, which is roughly what I'm used to, and it means it's exactly 5 foot. With a tip that's slightly smaller than what I'm used to at only 9.5mm rather than 10. This means there's been a compromise where I no longer quite have the raw power and spin that I used to, but on the other hand I should have more control and I can cue the ball a little bit more accurately. Although it will take me a little bit of time to be consistent with the new cue, at least until I'm up to speed with it. Now, it's really sad that I'm not going to be able to play with my old cue anymore because I've had this for the last 19 years, which means every single video I've made on YouTube, every single shot, mostly, unless I was doing something weird, I've played with this cue. And unfortunately, the damage up here is repairable, but I've had it done twice before already, including once about 9 months ago. And it feels like the wood just isn't going to take playing shots any longer. And that's why I came to the conclusion I'm going to need a new cue. And if I keep wanting to make videos like this, I'm going to need a new cue quickly. That's why I purchased this one off the internet, which I usually say is a mistake. Normally, if you need a new cue, my advice would be to go somewhere where you can test out as many as possible before you buy. Because if you just purchase one off the internet, that's not necessarily going to be right for you. This is what happens when you try to play with a cue that simply isn't right for you. You get down on the shot thinking you've lined everything up perfectly, you seem to pull back your cue and push it through straight, and it'll miss to one side or the other. And usually it'll keep missing to the same side over and over again, and you won't be able to compute why you're missing. This is why it's vital to take the time to find a cue that hits the ball in the direction you're expecting straight away, as it means it'll take a lot less time to get used to. I just got really lucky with this cue. I realized as soon as I picked it up and played a few shots with it that I understood exactly where every shot was going. And although it's going to take a little bit of time to get used to it and understand it completely, to start off with, it's a cue I can definitely play with. The only problem I was having with it is I wasn't quite hitting the ball as hard as I was expecting, but because of the weight of the cue, I've already explained why that is. The last thing to look at is the tip. Before we do any more, we're just going to find Kangnon Tet from Yangon, Myanmar, which is exactly there. Often when you get a new cue, it doesn't come with a decent tip on it. I think this one has because the person who sold it to me told me they just stuck a new Elk Master on it, and I think it's okay. But often you will notice if you go and change your tip, the cue starts to play a lot better because the tip that was on there before wasn't necessarily any good. Hopefully this cue lasts me at least the next 19 years, just like my old one did. And hopefully I've at least answered some of your questions about new cues. But if I've missed anything, don't forget to leave a comment and me or somebody else will probably get back to you with what you need to know. And if you want to know more about other areas of snooker, these two videos could help you out. And remember, don't just watch play and make the commitment to becoming a better player by subscribing to the channel and visit the website. See you later.